Yo, what's up guys? It's Noah here, and in today's video, we're going to be breaking down the Week 10 NFL slate on Draftkings and Yahoo. We're going to take a final look at this slate, go position by position, talk about all the players that I'm interested in for this week. We'll go through quarterback through tight end. Probably won't really hit on defense just because I don't spend too much time on defense, but we'll talk about quarterbacks through tight end, take a look at each position, hit on the maybe 5, 6, 7 guys that I have the most interest in at each position. Obviously, I'm not going to talk about every single player on the slate because I don't want this video to be, an hour long. So really just going to try and hit on the guys that I do have the most interest in and that I'm going to have the most exposure to in my lineups. But before we do get started with the video, as always, I would appreciate it if you would hit that like button down below. And if you are new to the channel, be sure to click the subscribe button as well. Hit the notification bell so that way you get notified every time I upload. You'll never miss out on any of my new videos. And if you do really enjoy my videos, and if they help you out a lot, and you want to get more content from me, you want to see more that I do have to offer, I have a Patreon link down below in the description. You can check that out if you are interested. It is obviously optional, but for those of you that want to check out the Patreon, it is linked down below. You can see all that I do have to offer over there. But let's go ahead and take a look at this Week 10 slate. We'll start off at quarterback like we always do. So this week I think is definitely another week where I do want to try and pay up at quarterback if I can. There really just hasn't been many value plays that I'm in love with. It's kind of been that way the last few weeks. Like last week, I thought Drew Lock was a good value, but I really wasn't going to play him in my main lineup. He was more of like a GPP play. I don't really see guys below 6K that I'm going to be considering for my main lineup, like for cash games. So we definitely want to try and pay up, and I think we're going to have the value to do so. We got some really good running back value this week. We'll talk about Duke Johnson, Mike Davis, two guys that look really good. So for me, if I'm paying up, I think it's in the Buffalo-Arizona game. It's Kyler Murray and it's Josh Allen for me. Those are the two guys I have the most interest in. I think Kyler is my favorite between the two. I talked about Josh Allen in my first look video, and while I do still really like Allen this week, I feel like Murray's upside is just a little bit higher than Allen's. His floor is also a little bit higher as well. I mean, we've seen how good Kyler has been this season. He's honestly been probably the best QB so far for fantasy. He's been right there with Russell Wilson in terms of, total fantasy points this season. Worst game this year was against Carolina, and he still had over 24 DraftKings points in that game. I mean, he's pretty much given you like a 25-point floor this year. We know he has elite rushing upside, can legit throw for 300 yards and run for 100 yards. Like, he can get you the 100-yard bonus, he can get you the bonus on both sides, the 300-yard passing bonus, the 100-yard rushing bonus. Like, I would not be surprised at all to see Kyler drop 40 DraftKings points again. I mean, he's gone back-to-back weeks with 41 DK points. This is another really good spot for him at home in a game that's probably going to be a shootout. Right now, this Buffalo-Arizona game has the highest total on the slate. It opened at 52. Since then, it's been bet up to 56. Should see a ton of points scored here. Love Kyler Murray this week. I think he's my preferred pay-up option at quarterback. Like him on Draftkings and on Yahoo. Like him over there as well at $38. He's actually cheaper than Josh Allen on Yahoo. Josh Allen, the most expensive quarterback over there. So definitely prefer Kyler Murray on Yahoo as well. But, like I said, I think Josh Allen's a really good play as well. More of a tournament option. I think in cash games, I'm probably going to be trying to pay up for Kyler. But Josh Allen, you could definitely look to. I mean, I liked him a lot last week in Seattle, and he had a really big game. 39 DraftKings points, 415 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. Also added 14 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. Josh Allen, he doesn't have the elite rushing upside that Kyler does. Like, Josh Allen's not going to run for 90, 100 yards like Kyler can. But we know his touchdown, in terms of rushing touchdown upside, his touchdown equity, it's very, very high. When the Bills get down to the goal line in the red zone, they will let Josh Allen punch it in. They don't really run the ball much in the red zone. They're a team that throws the ball a lot to begin with. And in a game that's likely to shoot out, we should probably see Josh Allen throw the ball 35 to 40 times again this week. He's definitely in play against Arizona. Feel a little bit better with Kyler, but I think I do, really like Josh Allen as well. Obviously, you could go to Russell Wilson. Against the Rams, at this point, I'm not really concerned with matchup when it comes to a guy like Russell Wilson. The Rams have a good defense, but Russell Wilson is pretty much matchup-proof in my opinion. He's been just as good as Kyler, giving you that 24, 25-point floor. Worst game this year was 24.9 DK points against Miami. I think Kyler's ceiling is a little bit higher because even Josh Allen, I think his ceiling might be a little bit higher just because this game is so likely to shoot out. But the Seattle Rams game also has a pretty high total. Right now, that game is at, let me see where the total's at in that game. Yeah, that game's at 54.5, so it's I think it's the second highest. Yeah, it's the second highest on the slate behind the Buffalo-Arizona game. Russell Wilson, great play as well. It's definitely Kyler, Wilson, and Allen for me at the top. I prefer all those guys over Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers has been great this year, but for 7,900, he's just a little bit too expensive for me. Plus, there's some win concerns in that Jacksonville-Green Bay game. I like the running backs in that game. I don't see myself really going to the passing game besides like DeVonta Adams, who, is a great play pretty much every week. But then in the 6K range, there's two guys I really like here. So Deshaun Watson, 6,900, we need to talk about. So this is another game that has, big win concerns. We saw, I think it was a couple weeks ago or maybe last week, where there was like a ton of games that had win concerns. We saw a lot of totals dropping. So far this week, it's only the Houston Cleveland game and the Green Bay Jacksonville game that has like weather concerns. And we're seeing that in the total. The Houston Cleveland game has dropped 7 points, opened at 54. Since then, it's been bet down to 47, which is obviously a pretty big concern. And then, the Jacksonville Green Bay game opened at 53.5, and since then it's been bet down to 50. I don't think the weather's as bad or the wind's as bad in the Green Bay game, but there's definitely some concerns in both, especially this Houston-Cleveland game. I think it's expected to be like 25 to 30 mile per hour winds. That's definitely a big bump down to the passing game, but Deshaun Watson's one of those guys that, they're going to throw the ball a ton. This is a Houston team that wants to throw the ball 35 to 40 times a game. I don't know if this game's going to shoot out like I thought it would. With the win concerns, maybe that lowers the chance you see a shootout, but Watson still going to throw the ball 35, 40 times a game. We know he's got rushing upside. Like, he'll run the ball 40, 50 times, or he'll get you 40 to 50 rushing yards as well. Like, I'm still not too worried about the win, especially if people are going to get off of Deshaun Watson. Like, I think he's going to be pretty low owned this week. I don't see many people going to him at 6,900. So I do like Deshaun Watson in tournaments. This is a Cleveland team you can attack through the air. They've been much better against the run this season than, against the pass. So if you're going to target Cleveland, you want to do it with, quarterbacks, receivers. Even though Duke Johnson is, in a bad matchup technically, I still really like him, and we'll talk about him, when we get to running back. But I do like Watson in tournaments. I think he gives us upside, and with the win concerns, I do expect him to be pretty low owned. And then Justin Herbert as well for 6,600. I mean, since he's taken over the starting job, Justin Herbert's been about as good as it gets. Worst game was 19.7 DK points against Carolina, pretty much giving you a 20-point floor. We know he's got big-time upside as well. This is a game that, could shoot out if Miami can put up points. I know they're favored in this game, but I think the Chargers are going to win here. If Miami can put up points, though, if Tua can play well, we could see a shootout in this game. It only has a 48 total, but I could see it going over that total. I do like Justin Herbert at 6,600. I think him and Deshaun Watson are definitely my two favorite plays in the 6K range. People are probably going to go to Jared Goff. It is a really good matchup for Jared Goff, and while I like the matchup for him, Jared Goff is still not a guy that I love playing in tournaments. I just don't know what his upside is at this point. I know he's had one game, where he had like 28 DK points against Washington, but he did have a rushing touchdown in that game. He got 31 DK points against Buffalo, but he also had a rushing touchdown in that game. I don't think we should really try and bank on rushing touchdowns from Jared Goff. He's going to have to throw for over 300 yards and probably 3 or 4 TDs for you to really hit like a ceiling game from Goff. I feel like I can get more of a ceiling from Herbert, maybe even Watson as well, even though there's win concerns there. So Jared Goff, good matchup, but for me, I'm probably going to look to Herbert or Watson over him, just me personally. But then value-wise, the value's pretty thin this week. There's really not much value that I love at quarterback. I think if I'm going cheap, Carson Wentz, probably my favorite option for 5,900. Facing the Giants team that he just, destroyed against in Week 7, had 31 DK points against them, 359 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns, also had a rushing touchdown as well. That is one thing that Carson Wentz has done a lot this season, is score rushing touchdowns. He has 5 on the year. They're using him a lot, like in the goal line and in the red zone. Like, they're running read options with Carson Wentz. He's getting rushing touchdowns. So I think, the rushing touchdowns are no fluke, in my opinion. If they get down to the goal line, to the red zone, they will let Carson Wentz punch it in. With Miles Sanders back, maybe we'll see them, run a bit more now that Sanders is expected back. But I do like Wentz as a value for 5,900. He's getting a lot of his weapons back. Zach Ertz is still hurt, but he's got Alshon Jeffrey back. He's expected to play this week. Miles Sanders is expected back. Goddard and Jalen Reagor both returned last week, and they'll be healthy for this game. So even though they don't have Wentz yet, even though they don't have Ertz still, this is a Philly team that's starting to get healthy. Wentz is starting to get some of his weapons back. I don't expect this Giants team to really slow down their offense as a whole. So I do like Wentz as a value. He's really the one value play I've kind of keyed in on. There's not really much under him that I like. I've heard people talk about Alex Smith against Detroit, but I probably won't be going to Alex Smith. Most likely, I'm going to be trying to pay up at quarterback if I can. So let's go ahead and move on to the running back position. So at running back, pretty much always a position you want to try and pay up at. There's usually always good plays at the top, and that's once again the case this week. Christian McCaffrey not expected to play, so we won't touch on him. But you do have Alvin Kamara for 8,200 against the 49ers. Not the best spot overall. 49ers have a solid defense. They have a solid run defense, but Kamara's just going to get so much usage through the air that he's one of these guys I pretty much consider matchup proof. He had a brutal matchup against Tampa Bay. Still had 15 DraftKings points in that game. I don't know if he's going to be very efficient against this 49ers team. He might only run for 3 or 4 yards a carry, but we know he's going to get probably 10 to 12 carries, maybe even more. He's probably going to get 5 to 6 targets as well. He's not going to get the elite usage in the passing game that he was getting before because now Michael Thomas is back. But 8,200, Kamara is definitely in play. However, I think I would rather save salary. I do like Aaron Jones over Kamara for $1,100 less. It's a great spot for Aaron Jones at home, big-time favorites against Jacksonville. Right now, the Packers are favored by 13.5 points in this game. Like I said, there's win concerns, so maybe we see the Packers run the ball a bit more than they normally would, given the win concerns. Jamal Williams is expected back, but we know what Aaron Jones' workload is going to be. He's going to get probably 13 to 15 carries, maybe even more. He's going to get some work in the passing game. We know, if they get down to the goal line and they run the ball, it's going to be Aaron Jones in the backfield, getting the running back touches when they get down to the goal line. He's going to be scoring those touchdowns. I know they've gotten down to the goal line a lot this season, and it seems like they always throw the ball when they get to the goal line, but Jones is out there. He has the chance to score rushing touchdowns near the goal line. He's going to get the work, in my opinion. If they get up, 3 touchdowns, 4 touchdowns late in the game, maybe we see them pull Aaron Jones, but I'm not really going to bank on that happening. I like Aaron Jones a lot. I think it's a great spot for him, and at 7,100, he is definitely underpriced. Even though his floor has kind of been low this ceiling, he's had some disappointing games. This is still a guy that has big-time upside, can break a slate at any point. So I do like Aaron Jones the most in terms of pay-up options. I think in this mid-range, there's definitely plays I like here. On the other side of that game, it is a great spot for James Robinson. Green Bay has been so bad against the run this season. Pretty sure they've allowed the second most fantasy points to opposing running backs. They're giving up a lot of receptions to running backs as well. And we know, Robinson's going to get massive volume, going to get usage in the passing game, back-to-back weeks with at least 25 touches. If they're playing from ahead, they'll feed James Robinson. If they're playing from behind, which is probably likely this week, James Robinson will still be involved. He'll still get plenty of usage in the passing game. He's pretty much secured like a workhorse, a workhorse type role. He's going to get over 20 touches no matter what the game script is. So I like James Robinson as well in the 6K range. I think he's a great play at 6,600. Miles Sanders, I think for tournaments makes plenty of sense against the Giants. It's his first game back from injury, so there's always some concerns there, but when Sanders is healthy, he gets great usage, and for 6,400, that's definitely too cheap for Sanders if he is going to get his normal workload. We'll have to keep an eye on the Arizona backfield. So as of Friday morning when I'm recording this video, we don't know yet if Kenyon Drake is going to play. He got 2 limited practices in. He was limited Wednesday, and he was limited on Thursday. Most likely Drake is going to play, but if by some means Drake is out again, Chase Edmonds, 6,300. He disappointed last week, but I'm going to be right back on Chase Edmonds this week, assuming Drake does not play. With Drake out last week, Edmonds, I think he played like over 90% of the snaps. He got 28 touches. He just got massive usage, and I would expect that to be the case once again this week if Drake doesn't play. It's a good matchup as well. It's another good spot against Buffalo. Buffalo has been pretty bad against the run this season. We've talked about how likely this game is to shoot out. I really like Chase Edmonds. I think, if no Drake, which probably won't happen, but if Drake doesn't play, 6,300, Chase Edmonds is probably my favorite play in the 6K range overall. It's close between him and James Robinson. I think Edmonds probably gets more touches, so for that reason, I would lean to him over Robinson, but both guys are definitely great plays. We'll just have to keep an eye on the status of Kenyon Drake. That's really, one of the big injuries we got to watch heading into Sunday. But then once you get down here towards the value tier, there's plenty of value at running back this week. Leonard Fournette against Carolina, great matchup there. I'm still worried about the touches in that Tampa Bay backfield. Fournette seemed to got the upper hand over Ronald Jones, but it's still kind of like a 60-40 split. You don't really know, like, if they get down to the goal line, who's going to be getting the touchdowns. Fournette's more of a tournament play, more of a riskier option, but, he has the upside here. His best game of the season came against Carolina earlier this year, so I don't mind Fournette, but there's 3 guys I really want to hit on for value. So first off, Gio Bernard, 5,400. I thought Joe Mixon was going to be back this week. They had a bye week last week. Mixon had all week to rest up, and he still has yet to practice so far this week. As of Friday morning, he has yet to practice, so all signs are pointing to Joe Mixon being out once again. In just the last 2 games with Joe Mixon out, Giovanni Bernard, 18 touches in both games, 20 and 22 DraftKings points. I know this is a brutal matchup against Pittsburgh, but Giovanni Bernard's a guy that just gets so much usage in the passing game. Like we saw against Cleveland, he only had 13 carries for 37 yards. He averaged less than 3 yards per carry, but he still gave you 20 DraftKings points because he added 5 catches, 59 yards, and a receiving touchdown. That's what Giovanni Bernard can do. Like he can give you 15 carries for 50 yards, and then he can give you 5 catches for 50 yards and a touchdown. Like, even in a tough matchup against Pittsburgh, I still do like Giovanni Bernard, assuming Joe Mixon does not play. The price tag actually came down. I'm pretty sure DraftKings thought that, Mixon was going to be back this week, but looks like Mixon's going to be out again, so Giovanni Bernard, we can definitely look to for value. But the 2 value plays that really stand out this week, first off, Duke Johnson, $5K on DraftKings. Looking at Yahoo's pricing, Duke Johnson coming in at $16 over there. Looks like one of the best value plays on the slate this week. David Johnson got injured last week, got a concussion in their game against Jacksonville. He had to leave and was not able to return. And as of Friday morning, David Johnson has not practiced all week, so all signs are pointing to David Johnson being out this week, which does put Duke Johnson into play because Duke now will take over that starting role. We saw when David went out last week, Duke got a monster workload, got 20 touches, 16 carries, 4 targets as well. They really have no one else behind Duke that I'm scared of taking touches away from him. If we look at Houston's backfield, they have Buddy Howell, who I have no idea who that is. They have Scotty Phillips, and they have Golan Gillespie, but I don't even know if these guys were on the active roster. I mean, this Buddy Howell guy hasn't touched the ball all season. I don't even know if these Scotty Phillips or this other guy, if they're even on the active roster. This guy looks like he probably is a fullback, if I'm just being honest. So they really have no one else behind Duke Johnson that I'm afraid is going to steal work from him. I expect Duke Johnson to get probably 85 to 90% of the snaps. I mean, he's going to get monster usage. Like I said earlier, Cleveland's been good against the run this season, but Duke Johnson's one of those guys, very similar to Giovanni Bernard. He doesn't really need to be efficient to have a good game. We saw last week he only averaged 2.6 yards per carry, but he was still able to get there because, 4 catches, 32 yards. He also got a goal line touchdown. He's going to be their goal line back if they get down to the goal line. They're going to use him a ton in the passing game. There's really not much to like with Duke Johnson this week. If David's out, which is pointing to that being the case, Duke Johnson looks like one of the better values on the slate at only 5K. Really hard to find guys, priced down below 5K or 5K and below that are going to get, over 20 touches. But I'm very confident Duke sees over 20 touches this week. So volume alone puts him in play for me. And then the chalk play this week, but really good chalk in my opinion, is Mike Davis. 4K on DraftKings. He has minimum salary. He's not as cheap on Yahoo. They got him somewhat affordable there at $17 or somewhat kind of priced up, but I still like Davis only $17. That's still a little bit too cheap given that Christian McCaffrey is going to be out this week, which puts Mike Davis back on our radar. We saw whenever Christian McCaffrey was out, weeks 2 through 8, 3 through 8, when CMC was out, I mean, Mike Davis just monster usage, 21 touches, 25 touches, 20 touches. He started to trend down against New Orleans and Atlanta. Things definitely went downhill. Wasn't nearly as good in those games, but I'm not too worried about that. We know the usage is going to be there. Davis is going to play, probably over 80%, close to 90% of the snaps. He's going to be their goal line back. If they get down to the goal line, he's going to be the guy punching it in. We know they will use Davis a ton in the passing game. It's a tougher matchup against Tampa Bay, no doubt. Tampa Bay has a very good run defense. They have a good defense overall, but kind of similar to Duke and to Gio, Davis is going to get just so much volume. He's going to get good usage in the passing game that I'm not too worried about the matchup, especially when you factor in that he's minimum salary. It's going to be very hard for him to fail and to kill your lineups at minimum salary. The only reason I think you get off of Davis is would be, I would say, just because he's going to be so popular. He's probably going to be over 50% owned in tournaments. In cash games, if you don't play Mike Davis, I mean, you're just an idiot. So please play Mike Davis in cash games. But in tournaments, if you're only playing one single entry lineup, could you fade Mike Davis and just hope that he busts? I guess you could, but me personally, I probably would still play Davis. I think if he gets over 20 DraftKings points, which is possible. We saw, whenever CMC was out, he had multiple games over 20 DK points. If he gets over 20, you're probably going to need him to cash, or definitely going to need him to cash, most likely. You're going to need him to probably take down a tournament as well. Me personally, I side on the era of, when it's good chalk, I tend to play it. So I think Mike Davis is good chalk this week. I'm going to be playing him a ton. He's going to be in my main lineup, going to be in a lot of my tournament lineups as well. Davis easily one of the top value plays on the slate this week. But let's go ahead and move on to receiver. I think we touched on running back. So because we have so much value at running back with Duke Johnson, Gio, Mike Davis, it's going to allow us to pay up at receiver. And normally receiver, I don't really pay up at, but if we have the salary, which I think I'm going to be able to, I'm probably going to be trying to get DeVonta Adams into my main lineup. Adams is very expensive, no doubt. He's $9K, the most expensive player on the slate overall, but DeVonta Adams has just been so good this season. He really only has 2 bad games, and that Tampa Bay game was a bit of an outlier. They got blown out. The Detroit game, he got hurt. Other than that, 44, 47, 30, 36 DraftKings points. Like, nobody has been better than DeVonta Adams this season. I'm pretty sure he's like the wide receiver 1 overall this year, and he's missed like 4 games this season, or like 3 games. I mean, the dude has just been so good. He's getting great usage. I mean, he's going to get double-digit targets, even though Green Bay is probably going to be playing with the lead for most of this game, and they're going to be playing from ahead. And even though there's some win concerns, like, DeVonta Adams is not a guy that, runs a ton of deep routes, although he can. He does a lot of his damage, like with slants, with quick routes. I mean, Aaron Rodgers will snap the ball quick, get DeVonta Adams the ball. I still expect a big game from DeVonta Adams, and because we have so much value at running back, I think paying up at receiver for a guy like Adams makes a lot of sense. So he's definitely one of my favorite pay-up options if I can find a way to get up to him, which should be relatively easy, especially if I pay down at tight end, which I'm probably going to be doing this week. I usually always pay down at defense. If I do that, I should have the salary to get up to a guy like DeVonta Adams. And honestly, in my main lineup, I don't really have a problem playing like DeVonta Adams and Aaron Jones together. I think both guys have passed to a ceiling game, especially like with Aaron Jones being so cheap, $7,100. I really have no problems playing Adams and Jones together. But then other pay-up options like Stephon Diggs, $7,500. Like him quite a bit here against Arizona. I think the upside is there in a likely shootout. Stephon Diggs, another guy that's just been so good this season. Double-digit fantasy points in every game so far. We know the target volume is going to be there. In a likely shootout, there's plenty of upside for Stephon Diggs. If he's going to see shadow coverage from Patrick Peterson, sure, you could be worried, but at this point, I don't really worry about shadow coverage when it comes to a guy like Peterson. He's just not the same cornerback that he used to be. He's not going to shut down an elite receiver like Diggs. I mean, Diggs is one of the best route runners in the league. He's going to find ways to get open. Josh Allen's going to get Diggs the ball. So I really like Stephon Diggs. Keenan Allen, a guy that I've been playing a ton, and I think I'm going to be right back on him this week. I mean, he's just been so good, man. Last 3 games, over 20 DraftKings points in 3 straight games. Double-digit targets in every game that Justin Herbert has started this season, aside from the New Orleans game where Keenan Allen got hurt. We know the target volume is going to be there. We know he has the upside to, put up 25, 30 DK points. He can easily go for over 100 yards and multiple touchdowns. Miami has a good secondary. They have Byron Jones. They have Xavier Howard, but Keenan Allen's a guy that kind of moves all over the field. Maybe one of those 2 guys will shadow Keenan Allen, but at this point, I think Allen's one of these guys that's like matchup proof. He's just such a good receiver, so talented. He's going to find ways to get open. Justin Herbert's going to get Keenan Allen the ball. I like Keenan Allen a lot as a pay-up option at receiver. Him, Diggs, DeVonta Adams. I think these are probably my 3 favorite spend-ups. I like Keenan Allen a lot on Yahoo. Pretty affordable over there, $26. Him and Diggs are both $26. I think both those guys are great plays this week. Both do feel just a little bit too cheap over there. But $7,100 on DK, even though the price is slowly coming up, Keenan Allen, you could argue, is still a bit too cheap, man. Like, this guy should probably be priced up there with like Diggs, Metcalf, Hopkins. $7,100 still might be a little bit of a discount for Keenan Allen. But then in the 6K range, I think both of the Rams receivers look really good this week. It's a great matchup for them against Seattle. Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods. I think if I had to choose one, I probably would lean with Cooper Kupp just because I feel like his volume, it's kind of more secure at this point. Got 20 targets last week, had a really big game against Miami. 11 catches for 110 yards, 25 DK points. Look, it's a great matchup for both guys. If you're stacking, like I could see definitely stacking up Goff, Kupp, and Woods, all 3 of those guys in tournaments, because there's definitely a path where you see maybe Jared Goff throws for 350 yards and 4 touchdowns, and he throws 2 of them to Kupp and 2 of them to Woods. That could happen. I could see doing a double stack there in tournaments and then running it back with someone from the Seattle side. But I think if I can only choose one Rams receiver, I do prefer Kupp over Woods this week, although both are really good plays. Terry McLaurin against Detroit, I like him as well in the 6K range. I think he is definitely in play. Scrolling down a little bit, not much stands out other than that, like in the 6K range. There's guys you could consider for tournaments, but no like optimal plays, cash plays for me. Now in the 5K range, I was going to be on Kenny Golladay, but it doesn't look like he's going to play this week. He didn't practice on Thursday. He's really affordable, but it doesn't look like he's going to play, so can't go to him. But then there are some other guys in the 5K range that I do like a lot. Brandon Ayuk, since Deebo Samuel, it looks like he's going to be out again. Brandon Ayuk, I think, is definitely in play with Deebo Samuel out. We know George Kittle's out as well. Last week with both those guys out, 8 catches, 91 yards and a touchdown, or that was the week before. 8 catches, 91 yards and a touchdown on 10 targets for Brandon Ayuk. The volume should be there. He's going to be their number one receiver. This is probably a game where San Francisco is going to be playing from behind in the I forgot what their stadium's called, the Superdome, the Metrodome, I can't remember, but in the Dome in New Orleans. This is a stadium that seems to always have shootouts. Pretty sure there is a high total in this game. Right now there is a 48.5 total. New Orleans favored by 10. Still though, there's likely to be a shootout here where we should see plenty of points scored in the Dome. 49ers probably going to be playing from behind, so definitely like Brandon Ayuk at 5,700. Christian Kirk I like a lot as well, 5,700. Definitely going to be looking to stack him up with Kyler Murray this week. Christian Kirk also very affordable on Yahoo, coming in at just $18. So he's been really, really good the last few weeks. Definitely been trending in the right direction. He got off to a really slow start to the season, but just the last 3 weeks, he had the kind of the fluky game against Dallas where he had two catches, both went for touchdowns. Had like an 80-yard touchdown catch and then a 6-yard touchdown catch near the goal line. But even against Seattle in Week 7, 8 targets, 5 catches, 37 yards, 2 touchdowns. Last week against Miami, 8 targets, 5 catches, 123 yards and a touchdown. Like, Kirk is definitely getting the volume that we want to see. He's getting 6 to 8 targets a game. We know Buffalo, they have good outside corners. They have Tre'Davious White, who is most likely going to be shadowing DeAndre Hopkins in this game. But Buffalo does struggle like with slot receivers pretty much whenever, like Tre'Davious White, I think is going to do a good job on DeAndre Hopkins. I don't know if he's going to, completely shut down Hopkins, but I think this could be a game where we see, Hopkins kind of fighting with White all game, and that's going to leave a guy like Christian Kirk to get open. Kirk's a guy that has big playability. We saw that last week, had a really long touchdown against Miami, had a long touchdown against Dallas. He's trending in the right direction. He's playing well. The targets are there. I like the matchup against Buffalo. A game that's likely to shoot out. Really like Christian Kirk at 5,700. In cash games, is he an optimal play in cash? Probably not. I still think his floor is somewhat low, but in tournaments, there's big time upside for Christian Kirk, and he's a guy that I do like quite a bit on both sides. But other receivers in the 5K range, I think John Brown looks really good at 5,300. He's very cheap over on Yahoo, so if you play on Yahoo, definitely look to John Brown over there. But coming off a game last week where he got 11 targets, 8 catches, 99 yards, just fell short of the 100-yard bonus. Look, John Brown's definitely been a headache this season. He's been, dealing with injuries a lot, just hasn't seemed to be healthy, but looked good last week against Seattle. The targets were there, and now gets another good matchup against Arizona, another game that has a lot of shootout potential that's likely to be high scoring. I think we could see a similar performance from John Brown this week, and at 5,300, definitely a guy I'll be looking to in the 5K range. If Kenny Golladay is out, which looks likely to happen, you could definitely look to Marvin Jones, 5,200. Had 3 catches, 43 yards, and a touchdown last week with Kenny Golladay out. Going to be their number one receiver. Should get plenty of volume. He only got 4 targets last week, but I would assume more volume comes his way this week, so don't mind Marvin Jones either. And then the last guy in the 5K range, DJ Moore, a guy that I think is just a little bit too cheap this week. Look, he's another guy that's been kind of a headache to roster. He's been frustrating the last few games. He's definitely not been good against Atlanta and KC. 2 disappointing games, just 7 and 3 DraftKings points. But now the price has come all the way down to 5,100. I like DJ Moore this week. Even though it's a tough matchup, I think he can, produce in this game. It's another game where the Panthers should be playing from behind, should be forced to throw. And, we saw in week 2 against Tampa Bay, DJ Moore was able to have a good game against this good Tampa Bay secondary. Had 8 catches for 120 yards on 13 targets. the volume should be there. Robbie Anderson's going to get his normal 8 to 10 targets, but I still think we should expect probably 6 to 8 targets for DJ Moore. Always a guy that has big play upside, can always spark a long touchdown run, or touchdown catch, I should say. At 5,100, I do like DJ Moore a lot in tournaments. I think he is just a little bit too cheap this week. He is my preferred Carolina receiver to go to between him and Robbie Anderson. But then in terms of like punt plays, if we're looking for cheap value at receiver, not much stands out in terms of cheap value. There might be some guys I overlook, but if I'm looking to go cheap, I think Richie James for 4K makes plenty of sense. He should be their number 2 receiver behind Brandon Ayuk this week. He had a big game last week against Green Bay with both Ayuk and Samuel out. 13 targets, 9 catches, 184 yards, and a touchdown. Look, I don't know if we can expect 13 targets again for Richie James, but should be out there, should get the volume, and with Deebo Samuel still out, I assume Richie James is going to be their outside receiver playing alongside Brandon Ayuk. At 4K, he's for sure in play as a value. And then Josh Reynolds, 3,500, the other value play I want to hit on. Look, it's a really good matchup against Seattle. He's seen 17 targets the last 2 games. I know Reynolds is not a guy that we've really been looking to roster much this season, but he's kind of trending in the right direction. I expect both, Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp to get some ownership this week. I don't know how many people are going to look to Josh Reynolds given he's so cheap. I don't know how many people are going to actually look down here for Josh Reynolds. But 17 targets the last 2 weeks. It's a really good matchup. It's a game that has shootout potential. I don't mind stacking up Jared Goff and Josh Reynolds, or even if you want to do like a double stack with Reynolds, or if you want to do a double stack with Goff, Kupp, Reynolds, like I could definitely see going that route as well. Reynolds is so cheap though, 3,500. If he's going to get 6 to 8 targets in a really good matchup in a great game environment, he's a guy that I do like as a value play. So 4K and below in terms of cheap punt plays at receiver, Josh Reynolds, Richie James, the 2 guys that stand out to me the most. But let's go ahead and quickly cover tight end just before we end the video. So this is a week where I think paying down a tight end is definitely going to be a route that I look to go. I normally always pay down a tight end, especially in my main lineup, and that's for sure going to be the case this week. George Kittle obviously out, so we can't play him, and then Travis Kelce, the other elite tight end, not on the main slate. I'm pretty sure the Chiefs have a bye week this week, so with no Kelce, with no Kittle, I just don't really see the need to pay up. Sure, you could go to Darren Waller, but Darren Waller, I don't think for 5,900. What is Darren Waller's ceiling at this point? I know he had a really big game against New Orleans, but I still think his floor is somewhat low for a $5,900 tight end. So I'd rather just save salary. There's cheap guys that could easily outscore Darren Waller, like Evan Ingram, 4,500. Had a good game last week against Washington, was able to finally get into the end zone, 5 catches, 48 yards, and a touchdown on 10 targets. Look, Evan Ingram's getting the volume right now. 29 targets the last 3 games against Philly. I like the matchup. He did have a solid game against them, 6 for 46 on 9 targets against Philly in Week 7. Evan Ingram's a guy that I've played a lot this season. I still think he's a little bit too cheap. I still think he's one of the more explosive, athletic, just good receiving tight ends in the league. I like him as a value play. I think you could look to Noah Fant as well for 4,900. Another guy that I've played a lot this season. Just very athletic, really good receiving tight end. Definitely a guy you could look to for value. Hunter Henry, 4,100. Another guy that's just going to be on the field a ton. Should get 6 to 8 targets. Going to get plenty of looks in the red zone as well. Against Miami, I like the matchup. 4,100 for Hunter Henry. You could go there. But probably my favorite tight end overall is Austin Hooper. I think he's the guy that I have the most interest in for value. 3,900, incredibly cheap. Coming off some really good games. He got injured and was forced to miss last week. I'm pretty sure he's missed their last 2 games, but he was trending in the right direction. 7, 10, 6 targets the last 3 games that he has played. No Odell Beckham Jr. We know Odell is out for the season, so that just kind of frees up more targets, more opportunity for Austin Hooper. If he's going to see, 6 to 8 targets, going to be on the field for over 70% of the snaps. Against Houston, even though there's win concerns in this game, Hooper's not a guy that really runs deep routes or anything. They'll look to, get him quick, slant routes, out routes, and stuff like that. I could see a scenario where Hooper easily goes for, 5 catches, 50 yards, and a touchdown, 15, 16 DK points. That's going to be really good at 3,900. That's definitely going to be good for me. So Austin Hooper is my favorite value tight end at 3,900. Probably the guy that I'm going to have, the most exposure to overall at the tight end position. But I think we covered tight end, guys. I think we broke everything down, quarterback through tight end. I hope you guys did enjoy this video. I do appreciate you watching. Hopefully it helped. If you did enjoy, hit that like button down below. Hit the subscribe button as well. Be sure to click that notification bell so that way you do get notified every time I upload. You'll never miss out on any of my new videos. And if you do really enjoy these videos and if they help you out a lot and you want to get more content from me, feel free to check out the Patreon, link down below in the description. If you want to see all that I do have to offer on Patreon, you can check that out, link down below. But best of luck this week, guys. Thank you so much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed, hope it helped, and yeah, best of luck this week, guys. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.